Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal production channel here at YouTube, and welcome to the third end of the year list for 2020, and this is my top 10 thrash metal albums of 2020. So without further ado, let's get into my top 10. So coming here at number 10 is El Fin de la Razón, which is the fourth studio album from Spanish thrash metal band Agresiva. Now, if it wasn't for me doing the review for that slow burn album Rock and Roll Rats, I probably wouldn't have reviewed this album in the first place. But ever since I did that, one of the members from Slow Burn, who didn't play on the album, on the Agresiva album, but one of the members in Slow Burn was an Agresiva, and he was the one that recommended me to check out this album to review, and that's how I did. And what I at least what I ended up getting was a very solid, very good thrash metal album, especially from Spain of all places. And then there's been plenty of great thrash metal bands that come out of Spain as well. But Agresiva is the only Spanish thrash metal band to make it onto this list. But again, this was their fourth full-length album. Again, still being relatively new, but these guys are definitely great. Definitely just solid thrash metal. Definitely, I wouldn't say spectacular, but it's good. That's all I gotta say. I don't want to say anything bad about this. It's just, it's a really good album. I think it's definitely worthy of being here. So, I just want to at least briefly run through this again. I did a review on this album anyways. I don't need to really talk too much about it. So let's definitely move on here. That was here at number 10. So, coming in at number 9 is Sea Savage from veteran, at this point still, I pretty much would rather consider them veteran Irish thrash metal band Gamma Bomb. And then these guys have been going at it for at least 2 decades. And this is their first album to at least kick off the new decade, the 2020s. Again, I've done a review on this album. I don't need to talk too much about it. But for what this album is, and for a band I've never really kept up with, and for a band I just never really got into, this was, I would have to say again, this was my, like I've stated in my review for Sea Savage here, I definitely dug it. I really was surprised by some of this. I mean, this is one of those bands where they don't take themselves too seriously, but they are self-aware of it and they make the best use of it. So they definitely made a very, good, competent speed thrash metal album. So Sea Savage is here at number 9. So let's definitely move on to number 8, which is Evolution Apocalypse, I think, or Evolution Apocalypse from British thrash metal band Virus. And again, these guys are a veteran thrash metal band, definitely going at it since the 1980s with classic albums such as Force Recon or Pray for War or Lunacy. Those 3 albums just classics in my opinion. But this album, I would say, is probably some of the best material I think Virus have put out, I would say, since Lunacy. Again, some of the EPs they had released I thought were fine. But to me, I think Evolution Apocalypse I thought was a more stronger album. This was definitely some of their most strongest material that I think they have came up with since some of their classic material back in the 80s. Again, like Force Recon, Lunacy, and I wouldn't say Pray for War. It's not as raw and punky like Pray for War, but it's more, again, closer to at least the stuff from Force Recon and Lunacy. But just like with Gamma Bomb, sometimes Virus is one of those bands where they definitely don't take themselves too seriously, though not to the extent of Gamma Bomb. These guys definitely will always throw in some humor, them doing the Inspector Gadget theme track, which is absolutely ridiculous, but at the same time, they did do the Munster theme song for Force Recon, so alright, definitely I think that this was a solid album from Virus. So, but that's here at number 8. So coming at number 7 is the debut album from still relatively new thrash metal band, that's Insanity's Reign. Again, self-titled. And if it wasn't for, of course, Paul of Doomsday's Today Records, I definitely wouldn't have checked this album out, but thanks to him, I got to check this album out. And for what this is definitely from some definitely unpolished, raw-sounding, crunchy thrash metal. Definitely, though, here and there's some uniqueness, definitely with some of the more melodic vocals here and there, more screaming style stuff. I don't want to use the word metalcore. I don't think I used that term in my review for this one, but I wouldn't say it goes beyond that, but it definitely almost pushes it. So that's why I would say it's not as strong of a thrash metal album, but this is just my honest opinion. But the thing is, whatever's good on here is definitely good, and it's worthy of being in my top 10 list. So if I use the term metalcore, I hope that doesn't scare anybody away. Again, I think this is just a fine, solid thrash metal. That's all I gotta say. So that's here at number 7. Finally, coming at number 6 is the third album from Reactory. It's Collapse to Come. And these, again, I've covered this album on this channel before, and I even covered their debut album, which was High on Radiation, which that was a good freaking album too. Let me actually, I think it was called High on Radiation. Yeah, I am absolutely correct. But Collapse to Come, this is probably, I think, after the last album, which was Heavy. I think this was a much more stronger album compared to Heavy, which again came out in 2016, which I thought was a solid album from Reactory, but Collapse to Come, I think, was this to me is a much stronger album. Again, German thrash metal to the core. Just good stuff, very much in the vein of like Sodom and Destruction. I wouldn't say Crater, but it pushes here and there to at least Crater, but it's not really close to that. Not like the upcoming band that is coming after Reactory. But Collapse to Come, this is a solid album from these guys. Again, also part of the shortest album that these guys have released. Again, it pretty much barely makes the 33-minute mark with this album. But you know what? It's so infectious. I love Collapse to Come. This is just a great album. Just good, solid German Teutonic thrash metal. So that's here at number 6. Finally, we're getting into the top 5 part of the top 10 list. And coming in number 5, since I've just already mentioned Reactory on basically where I've said that they definitely have a little bit of a Crater influence, but not so much. But this band right here does. It's Spectre of Devastation from Warfect. This was their, I believe, their 3rd or 4th full-length album. But this album is good. These guys are out of Sweden. But just like I've stated in my review, with most of the Swedish thrash metal bands I've listened to, they take a lot of inspiration from a lot of the German Teutonic thrash metal bands. Again, most of the big 3, Destruction, Crater, and Sodom. They definitely take their influences from 3 of these bands, and Warfect also takes some influences from Protector, another great German thrash metal band. And that's why I've stated in my review, this is just so good. And thanks to my brother for at least recommending me these guys. These guys are fucking awesome. So they're here. This is here at number 5, Spectre of Devastation. Finally, here coming at number 4 is the newest album from Testament. It's Titans of Creation. And compared to the past couple of albums being Brotherhood of the Snake or Dark Roots of Earth, I think Titans of Creation, is, to me personally, I feel is the best material they've put out since Formation of Damnation. And this is what I've stated in my review. And going back and listening to this album, I still feel the same way, though here and there, I know I've noticed a lot of people who, especially if you go on the Metal Archive, there's a lot of I hate to say mediocre, but there's a lot of negative reviews for this album. When it first came out, it began with some pretty good reviews on the Metal Archives towards the Titans of Creation. But ever since then, there's been more and more negative reviews. I've even seen more negative reactions toward this album now. And going back and listening to this album, I can kind of see, but at the same time, I think it's a lot of really nitpicking. Because I think this is a really good album from Testament. I think it's the most strongest material they've put out, I feel personally, since Formation of Damnation. To me, I mean, compared to a lot of the big four thrash metal bands, like Let It Be Slayer, or at times Megadeth, or Metallica, or Anthrax, just some of them, they usually really have a lot. The material that some of these bands put out is, I mean, I don't want to, I hate to lump Anthrax in there, because I really thought the last two Anthrax albums were great, but when it comes to especially like Slayer and Metallica or Megadeth, there's a lot of hit and miss stuff, and Metallica haven't really been a full-on thrash metal band since And Justice for All. They haven't been. And Slayer have just, the last album, Repentless, I thought was an absolute turd. It just sucked. And every bit of the stuff since even Dave Lombardo had been back in Slayer, a lot of the material was just so hit and miss. But compared to some of these bands, I think Testament at least had a way of being the at least when it comes to at least the American thrash metal bands, they are at least pretty consistent. And I think this album is still by far 10 times better than Repentless. It's still 10 times better than I hate the third Dystopia, because I thought that was a solid album from Megadeth, but I find this sound to be a much better album than that. I know there's probably going to be some people that find that be a little bit of a negative, be like, why did you say that? That's totally wrong. Listen, this is my list. This is my commentary. Go find somebody else that caters to your opinions, okay? Jesus. But that still, Titans of Creation, I think this is definitely a good album. And compared to a lot of the other ones, I think, again, Testament are still at least the stronger of at least the American thrash metal bands. I guess you can say maybe next to Exodus. I don't know. But it's good. It's there at number 4. It's still enough praise for this album. Normally, it wouldn't get a higher list on probably a lot of my lists here, but it's here at number 4, which is at least high enough. So there we go. Titans of Creation here at number 4. Coming number 3 is the newest album from alongside Gamma Bomb. It's Weapons of Tomorrow from Warbringer. And when I say them next to Gamma Bomb, definitely these guys were definitely one of the ones that really came out of that sort of new wave of thrash metal in the mid 2000s. But it seems like with each album, Warbringer just seems to get a lot better and better. And Weapons of Tomorrow, they really showed they have just gotten a lot better. And this is a strong album. This is definitely some of the best material I think Warbringer have put out. And compared to the very last album, which I thought was very good, again, Woe to the Vanquished, I thought that was a very good album from Warbringer, but Weapons of Tomorrow hits me a little bit more better than compared to Woe to the Vanquished. But I don't want to really knock any of these two albums, but Weapons of Tomorrow is a fantastic thrash metal album. Definitely just one of my favorite thrash metal albums of this year, but we have yet to get to some one of my absolute favorites, but I'm just gonna leave it right here. Again, Weapons of Tomorrow this is a great album. So that's here at number 3. So finally at number 2, speaking of some of my absolute favorite thrash metal albums of this year, and this came out on October 30th. It's the Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny demo from Mr. Bungle. Oh my god. This album is so infectious. I love every bit of this album. If what I've said about Titans of Creation from Testament being better than most, at least what Slayer or to some extent Megadeth or Metallica have put out, Mr. Bungle ends up topping that. They really, and this even features, again, 2 members of some of the big 4 thrash metal bands. Got Scott Ian of Anthrax on this album, and Dave Lombardo of Slayer, at least formerly of Slayer, because he wasn't on Repentless. But this album is 10 times better than Repentless. This at least sounds, I've seen some people say this sounds more like Slayer than Slayer these days, and I can at least agree with that, but this is just a solid, crunchy thrash metal album. I mean, most of this material dates back to at least the 1986, because The Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny was the very first thing Mr. Bungle released before they went to become more experimental. So yeah, they started off as a thrash metal band. And Mike Patton, I wish I talked about more of this also in my review for this, but his thrash metal style vocals, I think, are fantastic. I wish he had did more thrash metal stuff, because I think he's got a great voice. I've almost went back and forth on who he ends up reminding me at times with his voice, because at times I've made some comparisons, maybe Darren Travis of Sadus, but then I started then thinking of Gary Markovich of Blood Feast, because he just has that. I mean, I've also made some comparisons maybe here and there to the late Paul Bailoff. But he just sounds fantastic, and Trey Spurance, oh my god, I'm surprised he hasn't done more metal albums, because he's a fucking killer guitar player. Some of the guitar solos on here are just fantastic, and it's just really brings back a lot of that classic thrash metal guitar soloing of the 1980s. Like I've stated, this album would have been perfect on any of the Combat Records catalog, or Under One Flag. This is just good thrash metal. But we haven't even yet to get to my number 1, so let's finally get into my number 1. So, as good as the Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny demo is, what is my number 1 thrash metal album of 2020? Well, even though this album was released on October 30th, and I've stated it's still relatively new, but I gave this album a lot of good spins. But my number 1 goes to Genesis 19 from Sodom. This album was released just a month later, especially a few weeks or so after the Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny demo was released. But god damn, it was almost tough, because I had to go back and listen to these two again side by side, just to kind of see which one ends up at least to get the number 1 spot. But it just went to Genesis 19. The Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny demo is a fantastic thrash metal album, but this album is, this is so good. I mean, this one, I almost would contemplate on whether or not if I wanted to even add this into my top 10 extreme metal or even death metal albums of 2020, because this album, again, many people will definitely go on and will say that Tapping the Vein was probably the most death metal that Sodom would sound. However, come many decades later, they do Genesis 19. They end up expanding a lot on that sort of style of Tapping the Vein, but they took it even further. But I mean, most of this album is still thrash. I mean, it's still worthy of being thrash. But it just has a lot of a sort of a death metal thing going on, especially with the Nishmir Minlan, which, again, combining a lot of them blast beats. Same thing with like Friendly Fire, or this title track, and the Harpooner, Dehumanized, and Wild Open Pigpen. They're so good, but they're still playing a crunchy thrash metal. I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah, Euthanasia, Glock and Roll, Occult Perpetrator, Indoctrination, which definitely harkens back to like Get What You Deserve. But it's so good. There's just this quality German thrash, again, of the Teutonic thrash metal variety. It's just great. Tom Angel Ripper just hasn't sounded this nasty, this gnarly in a long time. And having Frank Blackfire back in the band is just great. And the 2 new guys, they fit the band great. I mean, at this point, Sodom are now a 4-piece, but this is good. It adds another dynamic. Again, I've done a review on this album. I don't need to really go into more and more depth of this album, but it's to me, it should give you enough reason for at least to know why this is my number 1 thrash metal album of 2020. So there it is, at number 1, Genesis 19 from Sodom. If you have any thoughts on any of these albums that I talked about on here, let me know in the comment section below. But if there's any albums in here that you haven't even heard, again, you should know which ones you then want to check out. Again, I give at least enough opinions, enough word, okay, just enough summarizing and on some of those albums. I do enough to go on at least into detail for why they're here. So with that, I hope all of you enjoyed. Let's have you get on to the next list, which will be out tomorrow. That is the top 10 rock releases of 2020. Take care, everyone.